You are listening to Vanguard Elements, the alternative Mexican-American voice of the Southwest. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the individual expressing those views and opinions, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated organization, employer, or institution. Thank you for supporting independent Mexican-American media.
U.S. Representative Veronica Escobar is once again calling for accountability for UTEP President Heather Wilson after a federal investigation into the canceled National Science Foundation grant determined that no apparent wrongdoing had occurred in the preparation and submission of the grant proposal. The NSF initially suspended the grant in the spring of 2024, soon after UTEP officials erroneously reported that the grant proposal contained inaccuracies. The federal agency would eventually reallocate the grant funds and cancel the grant entirely in 2025. Representative Escobar has characterized the $15 million award, which had the potential to eventually expand to $160 million over an interval of 10 years, as a once-in-a-generation transformative economic opportunity for El Paso and the region. And now that the grant has been lost, she has renewed her calls for accountability for Wilson. But what does accountability for Wilson entail? And is Wilson the only public figure who should be held accountable for the loss of the grant? We'll be back in a moment to explore this question and connect the dots on this situation with Steve Cianez and El Paso podcaster Julie Renton. You are listening to Vanguard Elements.
You are listening to Vanguard Elements, the alternative Mexican-American voice of the Southwest. Vanguard Elements is available on a range of platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, and Podchaser. Thank you for supporting independent Mexican-American media.
Welcome back. You are listening to Vanguard Elements. My name is Aldo Mena, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, Steve Cianez. And we are also very proud to be joined tonight by Julie Renton, an El Paso podcaster and political activist. Welcome to the podcast, Julie. And once again, thank you both for joining the conversation tonight.
No, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. It's like my first invite to a podcast as a guest.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm really excited about it.
Well, yeah. Well, we're excited to have you. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Julie, for being on the show with us tonight, on this podcast tonight. Like always, it's always an honor, and it's a great pleasure being able to sit here with you guys and have a great conversation and talk about the issues that matter most to our community, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
I agree.
So, Julie, just to start tonight's conversation, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and the No Pasa Nada podcast?
Yes, I'd love to. So I am from El Paso. I wasn't born here. I was actually born in Ciudad Juarez, but I did come to the States when I was very young, and my family eventually settled here in El Paso. So I've basically grown up most of my life here. I lived in Segundo Barrio. I went to Guillen Middle School, Bowie High School. I did leave for some time because I married and my husband was in the military. So I left for about a decade. And then came back. My husband just recently retired a few years ago. He retired here, finished his career at Fort Bliss. And we decided to stay here because we both love El Paso. So, this is home for us. And as far as my podcast, I actually started the podcast under a different name. In the beginning, it was a whole different name. And I just love talking to people. I love getting to meet people. And it was a lot about bringing people that maybe inspired me in some way or that I was curious to learn more about, their life, their experiences, maybe some work they were doing that that I liked or I wanted to know more about. And then I slowly started to notice that my interest was more towards amplifying voices of people that look like me, right? Black individuals, indigenous people, Chicano, Latinx people. I found myself connecting and networking more with people that probably had a lot of more of the same challenges as I did. And so I decided to change the name to No Pasa Nada podcast, right? And No Pasa Nada, of course, when the worst is happening, and like coming from Mexican families, when the worst of the worst is happening, I remember my dad would say, No pasa nada, no pasa nada. And indeed, everything was falling apart, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
It was his way of like, and a lot of other people, right? Like older people, it was their way of calm down, we're gonna do this, we're gonna get through this. And so now this podcast that I'm getting ready to like get back on it and get it back to work, because I put a pause on it for a little bit. It's going to be exploring more of our community challenges, everything from traditional, things, foods, just everything that has to do with our community that I love so much. And so it's going to be emphasizing a lot of that moving forward.
Sounds cool. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
no,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
no. I mean, I just, first of all, thank you for sharing that, Julie. I mean, Juarez, right? I mean, both men and I have been in Juarez. I'm also from the area, though right now I'm in LA. But I get that idea of, trying to create an outlet where we can express our voice, nuestra voz, right?
Mhm.
I don't think our stories are being told the way they need to be told.
Mm-mm.
And when they're told by people that unfortunately don't look like us, don't have the same past that we have, right? And
Exactly.
somehow, tell the story very differently from the way we kind of perceive it and live it. But I do like the title, No Pasa Nada, right? It's like the stay calm, stay focused, steady. And in reality, we kind of have to be like that at times, right? Because in
Yeah,
these moments and it's the momentos, it is difficult. It
it is
is brutal
hard.
out there.
It is hard. And the thing is that we are people of resilience, right?
Hmm.
And I love that about us. I love that about us. And I think there's everybody's so proud, like Mexican Americans, we're so proud of our roots and our traditions. But I really want to have a space and connect with other people such as yourselves that have this passion to really just exclaim to the world, like, I love us and I love
Mm-hmm.
everything that makes us, right? And so that's why I'm so excited to be able to connect with like other locals, other fellow El Pasoans with the same sort of like similar backstories, because it's us. We are needed in order to have others really shed light on what we need, what we really are about.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I started watching your podcast on YouTube and I was just hooked on it right out of the gate.
Oh,
I
thank
couldn't
you.
get enough. I loved it. I just wanted to put this out there too. I just love to see El Pasoans doing creative things. And if it's a politically oriented, project or politically oriented content, then that's even better because I think we need more of that here in El Paso. So, great
Thank
job with
you.
your podcast. Very
Thank you so
interesting.
much. I appreciate it. Thank you. I wanted to add, if it's okay with you, Aldo.
Hmm.
Um, I think how there are some people that say, "Oh, I'm not very political, and I want to create, but I don't want to make it political." And I think just to kind of like piggyback off of what we were saying about our struggles, our traditions, who we are, our stories, I don't think that we can do that without being political. And
Right.
so I think for anyone out there who, first of all, I think there's so much talent here in the city. I love that too about us, right? Very creative, always finding ways to express ourselves by different mediums. Um, but the ones that I appreciate the most, eventually you start to see, oh, this is very much political, right? Because it's the only way to really tell our stories, I think. So for anyone out there listening who's like, well, I don't really know much about politics or I don't want to get involved, just by sitting there and sharing your story, I guarantee you you're going to find that political aspect to it.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. There's a lot of people especially in our community, who shy away from politics for whatever reason. And our voter turnout rates sort of mirror that reluctance or whatever. And you see it every day where people just, people start talking politics and they're like, oh boy, these are troublemakers. We're kind of the radical left scum that Trump is always complaining about, and proudly so. So, we do this all the time,
Yeah.
everywhere, actually. So just another quick question. Why did you choose to produce a podcast? What was your motivation to start a podcast? Because as you know, it's not easy. It takes a lot of work, a lot of logistics involved. What motivated you? What compelled you to do that?
Well, I think what motivated me is that I love talking. I love
Mhm.
talking, and I love creating, and I love finding ways to express myself, and I find that I can more easily express myself by talking, right? And just getting to know other people. So I really love that. Getting back to like our culture, when you come around the table and like everybody's kind of sharing a meal or una tacita de café, a lot of conversations happen during those times, and they're very special. They're very memorable. I have memories of my family, the women in my family, doing that and discussing very important things, right? Through those conversations, sharing stories about our own family. And so to me, that just kind of came, it was like the obvious, outlet for me. And then I said one day, I think I had been saying it for years. I think I want to do a podcast. I want to do a podcast. I want to get it started. But I have 5 kids and I was a stay-at-home mom. And with my husband being in the military for 23 years, a lot of the time it was just myself at home, tending to them, the house, and all those other things. And so it was really hard for me to find the time to do it, But then it finally kind of happened with the support of my husband and his help and stuff. And he just said, "Okay, we're gonna do this. You want to do this? Here we go." And that's really
Mhm.
why I chose to do that. Yeah.
Mhm. What I think what a lot of people that I've spoken to that want to start a podcast, um, I think there's this misconception, Julie, and you might agree with me. Just like politics, you have to be an expert communicator, an expert, somehow you have to have that right voice, that right tone, the
Right.
right demeanor. And what I've seen, and you might agree or disagree, but what I've seen is it's all about being legit, being authentic, right? As long as your stories come from your heart, you're telling a story that is, that is representative of your life, and it is your story, or you share the story of someone else. Um, I think there's a lot of space for that, and I think that is really what makes the difference between a podcast that sometimes can be too technical, too academic, right? Versus a podcast that can be not only entertaining but also informative. So I'm wondering what your take is on that.
No, I do. I 100% agree with you. I think that sometimes people, and I'll include myself in that, because when I was thinking about it, I think I was in my head about it. Like, am I going to say the right words? Am I
Mm,
going to be discussing the things that people care about? Like, it was a bit of a hurdle for me to get over, right? Because I know, like I said, I know I love talking to people. I love connecting with other people. That was not going to be a challenge for me. But then it was like, now I'm going to put this out for everyone to see. what if they think it's boring? What if they hate my voice? What if, you know what I mean? And to be fair, when I first heard my voice on a podcast, I was horrified. I was like, do I really sound like this? Uh, and I think we all, I don't know if it happens to you guys.
Likewise,
Yeah.
happened to me too. Like, what? I thought, he sounds like an idiot. But anyways, that was my own thinking,
I
right?
know. I was like,
Like, what
I
is
have
that idiot doing in front of a mic,
a
right?
mic. I know. And I was thinking, I have the
Take
worst
that mic away.
voice. I have the worst. But then it was just getting over that and really finding, I guess, joy and like just thinking, you know what, this is what I want to do. The people that are coming on here are people that I'm genuinely interested in learning
Mm,
about, or even because some of my friends made it on the have made it on the podcast as well. And it's like these are people that I love and that I admire. And so I don't care if, because you'll find the right people, right? Like the right
mm,
people will find what you're creating, what you're putting out there. They'll take away whatever's beneficial to them. And I just kind of had to hold on to that and be like, I mean, I'm not, obviously, not everyone is going to like us. Not everyone is going to like the content we're putting out there. But I think, like you said right in the beginning of this, if you are just authentic and you just show yourself, even with like all the little mistakes and all the random
hmm
little things that I think people appreciate that, right? Because they know, okay, this
Yeah.
is someone who I can trust that's going to be authentic. And if
Yeah.
they get it wrong, they're going to tell me, whoops, sorry, that wasn't okay, right? And
hmm
and I think you just kind of have to get over your
mm,
own self, really, your own
yeah.
self-doubt.
Yeah, we don't make mistakes. We make happy mistakes, right? What is
Happy
it
mistakes.
Right.
The
that
meaning,
Peter
right?
Well,
yeah,
Julie, you're
yeah.
really good at it. I just want to say that you're very good at
Oh,
you
thank
sound
you.
great. You do, very good at it. So
Thank
keep doing
you.
it. Thank you. Let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll
Mhm.
be right back to continue our conversation with Julie Renton in just a moment.
Sounds good.
Welcome back. This is the Vanguard Elements podcast. I am joined tonight by Julie Renton and Steve Cianez. So, guys, on tonight's episode, I was thinking that we could explore and discuss the mishandling of the now canceled National Science Foundation grant, along with the larger political implications of this situation. But before we do that, I just wanted to, just quickly preface my our comments by saying that when we criticize Heather Wilson, that doesn't mean that we are in any way criticizing UTEP or UTEP students or El Paso. Full disclosure, I'm not a UTEP alumni. I went somewhere else, but I care deeply about UTEP because I understand how important the university is in so many ways to the development of El Paso and to the region as a whole. So I just want to make that abundantly clear. We care about UTEP and we care about El Paso, and that's why we are so invested in the struggle against Wilson and against Republicans and against Trump and any political figures, including Democrats, uh, who continue to shelter and protect and collaborate with Wilson. So our criticism is not intended as a criticism of UTEP or El Paso in any way. Okay, I just wanted to sort of preface our comments by saying that. But so, anyways, even before we begin to discuss the loss of the NSF grant, I just wanted to ask you guys, what were your impressions of Wilson's initial appointment to the presidency of UTEP? As you know, when it was announced she was coming to UTEP, there was a lot of controversy associated with her appointment for various different reasons. And I'm asking you guys to harken back to 2019 when the
Mm.
announcement came out. What were your, and we'll start with you, Julie. What were your initial impressions?
Well, really, like, why is she coming here? I mean, you know what I mean? Because I know that she served in the Trump presidency the first time around. And so just with that alone, it was like that seems very out of touch for me, right? Like I don't think she would understand us. She definitely wouldn't understand the community. And even if she did understand it, I don't think that she would be a good representative of this community. And then obviously, like the majority of the student body at UTEP is Mexican, Mexican American, you know, a lot of Latino community, large Latino community. So yeah, it was a lot of like, why? Really, just as
Mm,
simple as why.
yeah. No, I agree, and I think I'm going to go back a little bit before her appointment, and just to kind of get an understanding of, her history and her history or representation, right? We know that she was in New Mexico, and we know that she was representing CD1, I think it is, yeah, CD1, which is basically the Southern Congressional District, which, by the way, is no longer the CD1 that she ran in. It is a CD that has been redistricted, not just recently, some time ago, and is now held by Representative Gabe Vasquez. And then prior to him, it was held by Deb Harrell, and then I think it was Sochi. Can't remember her last name. Sochi Small. So, I just want to say that in CD1, when you talk about that congressional district, there is a very, very heavy Republican population there. But it's very, very different, though, from Las Cruces. And Las Cruces is basically the third largest city in New Mexico on the I-25. As you travel north, you got Albuquerque, and then you got Santa Fe. So, the fact that she represented that district doesn't necessarily mean that she represented the interest of people in Las Cruces. In fact, the folks in Las Cruces actually voted in favor of the Democratic challenger. Again, proof of it is when Xochitl won, and then when Gabe Vasquez has won, and then still is our congressional representative in that district. So she is not necessarily aligned in the political aspect, in the ideology aspect, with, I would say, the larger El Paso area. And so it was a surprise for me that someone who had served in CD1, and perhaps used that as a reason to get appointed, was now representing El Paso UTEP, being a university that I attended, by the way, and got my master's degree there, which I believe to be a little bit more progressive and liberal, and doesn't necessarily share her background or her political ideology. So it was surprising, to say the least, for me. But then again, you talk about politics, you talk about people being in cahoots. And so it's understandable why she ended up with the job.
No, absolutely. She was serving in the Trump administration just prior to coming to UTEP. So this
Mhm.
was shocking to
Hmm.
many of us. I can't think of a worst possible,
Choice.
president for UTEP. And, it's one of those things that I consider her installation as president of UTEP in this community, this particular university, as an ongoing slight to the Mexican American community. And I think I was at UNM when she was the congressional rep from for New Mexico. And she never won out the Albuquerque area ever. I think at
Or
one
Las
point there
Cruces,
was
yeah.
just one big, so it's always these outlying areas that, but uh, today, of course, there are three congressional reps in New Mexico, and they're all solidly Democrat. I don't think they're going to even have a somebody running for senator in New Mexico. I don't think the Republicans are even going to field a candidate. So things have changed in New Mexico, thankfully.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we now have her, and so that's
Now we're here.
now it's our problem. Um, But anyway, so I just wanted to quickly kind of, review what the grant entailed and then what the significance of the grant was for UTEP in case anybody's unfamiliar with the situation. So the lost grant, I think it was officially known as the National Science Foundation Engines Development Award. And this was an early stage grant meant to help certain regions begin the process of transforming into technology and research hubs. So in other words, this type of grant was designed to initiate the development of a new technology-based economy, so that, places like El Paso could develop an economy that was similar to, sort of the traditional or currently established or emerging tech hubs like, Silicon Valley, LA, Seattle, Denver, Austin, and Phoenix to a lesser extent. Um, so the plan was to help the region develop or transition to a sort of a technology-based economy, which would have been great. The initial grant was I think $15 million with the potential or projected expansion of up to roughly $160 million over an interval of approximately 10 years. So pretty major. Okay. What UTEP's grant proposal focused on specifically was developing a binational advanced manufacturing and aerospace innovation ecosystem in what is sometimes referred to as the Paso del Norte region, which includes El Paso, Ciudad Juarez, and southern New Mexico. Okay. This grant has been described by Representative Escobar as a, quote, once in a generation economic opportunity because of how expansive the funding could have become. I believe she used the term moonshot at one point. So in other words, this was El Paso's chance to really transition into something significant. Okay. So here's sort of the timeline. It was initially awarded, I think, in early 2024. By late April, just a few months later, UTEP administrators reported inaccuracies in the grant proposal directly to the NSF. The NSF immediately proceeded to suspend the grant, and a federal investigation by the NSF Office of the Inspector General immediately ensued. By mid-August of 2025, the NSF had officially canceled the grant and reallocated the grant funds. But then just recently, just a couple of weeks ago, I think on February 4th, the OIG investigation concludes that, one, no research misconduct had occurred, and that, two, there was no evidence to substantiate UTEP's allegations of fraud, falsification, or intentional misconduct in the preparation of the grant proposal. So the grant proposal was fine. No problems with that. Nobody overstated anything or misrepresented anything. And this is from the NSF itself. And furthermore, okay, and this next point is kind of important. The principal investigator and lead proposal writer, Dr. Azan Chowdhury, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, was completely exonerated by the investigation and cleared of any and all wrongdoing. Okay, so they really threw him under the bus. I think he was suspended from his position, demoted, whatever. He did nothing wrong. Okay. So at the conclusion of the investigation on February 4th, Representative Escobar, once again, and I might add, justifiably called for accountability for Heather Wilson for this obvious failure in leadership. Okay. Do you guys remember Susie Bird? She was a former El Paso City representative. She went even further in her criticism of Wilson and openly called for Wilson's removal from the office of the presidency in a Facebook post, from what I understand.
I mean, understandably so.
Right. And I think that Heather Wilson is, in my opinion, clearly responsible for this. The error occurred within the administrative infrastructure that she provides oversight for, right? And I think that ultimately university presidents are accountable for systemic failures in the universities that they oversee. So at a very immediate level, I think that we can all agree that, Wilson should be held accountable for this failure of administrative leadership. I don't mean to speak for you guys. I mean, what do you guys think? Is the loss of the grant, can this be sort of traced back to Heather Wilson? Can we blame, is it justified to blame her for the loss of the NSF grant?
I think so. I mean, because like you were saying, she's overseeing the university. This is not a small grant. Of course, all grants are wonderful. I'm not trying to say that, just because it's a smaller amount, it wouldn't have mattered. But this was a huge amount that could have potentially been allocated here, boost the economy. Just going back to what we were saying earlier, so much talent here. That would have provided, jobs, generated so much for the community. She 100% needs to be held accountable because she is at the very top. She's the leader. How could she not have been involved when this came up? Like, okay, let me fact check. Let me see, why are we even doing this? Do we really have the means or the evidence to continue moving forward with this? And then in the end, it turns out nothing was done wrong. Like, in fact, I think I read in one of the articles that you had sent, Aldo, that it said the professor himself was like, there was nothing to correct. It was, in fact, one of the best grant write-ups that I have ever done, right? Because it was such an important issue. It was a lot of money. So I think she definitely needs to be held accountable. Not to mention that, I mean, just even not mentioning the grant, she doesn't have the qualifications, again, doesn't really represent the community, doesn't understand how things are here. I don't know how she really aligns with some of the issues that most of us, that matter to most of us here in the community. And now you add this. Yeah, she definitely needs to be held responsible for that, or held accountable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of
No,
the
and I
complaints
agree.
I've heard is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, I agree. I mean, look, I mean, here in LA, just yesterday, if you guys didn't know this, it's all over, national news. AP is running the story, and all other media outlets are running also the same story. But the FBI raided the superintendent's um, office and home, right?
Mm.
I
Here in
did
LA.
see that
You guys hear
today.
about that?
I
Yeah.
heard that
Yes.
just today.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're not talking $1 million. We're not even talking 500,000. We're not even talking a penny, right? Yet this guy is being harassed, right? It's retribution, political retribution for the time he stood up for the children of immigrants and immigrants themselves, right? And newcomers and undocumented children and students, right? He was very, very clear about his stance and where he stood in with regards to what Trump was doing. And so here's a guy, right, that speaks his mind and is celebrated by the community. And guess what, right? Now you're under investigation for what we really don't know. There's this rumor that he somehow there's a tech company involved in this ordeal, but come on now, you got the FBI investigating, right? And you have on this other side a Trump appointee, right, who is responsible for losing up to $160 million for the city of
Mm.
El Paso. And
Yes.
she's still there. No one's done nothing.
Yes.
It's not like the police is showing up on her door and knocking on her door and saying, well, what the hell did you do? You lost us $160 million, and that's a lot of money. Not only that, but the potential of what that money could have meant for the economy, right, of El Paso.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so, it's ridiculous to have someone. It's just audacious to have this person still in power, and still leading and directing, UTEP, and it's just I don't get it. Just to hear it is unbearable. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. People have criticized her for, first of all, okay, if you had some reservations about the grant proposal. What you could have done is done an internal investigation initially. Okay. They immediately, reached out to the NSF, spooked the NSF, and they were like, oh my God, there's some sort of fraudulent representations going on here, some inaccuracies, whatever. They suspend the grant. And then eventually we're like, okay, well, they start this investigation. It takes about 2 years. But in the meantime, they're like, okay, never mind. We're just going to move on. They reallocated the grant funds. Grant was gone. By the time they figured everything out and they realized, you know what, there were no problems with the grant proposal, it was too late. Money's gone, opportunity's gone. The transformative economic opportunity that had been presented to us was gone. And now
Gone.
they're scrambling to, line up these little grants here and there. I think Heather Wilson and Representative Tony Gonzalez from Congressional 23 recently announced like a $2 million grant for drone training or something like that. Like that's going to make up for it, right? But yeah, just a total mishandling of the situation. And not just UTEP has lost out, but El Paso has lost out as well. So guys, real quick, what do you guys think accountability looks like for Wilson, though? Okay, I think we can all agree she needs to be held accountable. What does that mean in the context of a university president?
Well, I feel that if she really had character, she would first and foremost give a public apology to the individual who was directly harmed by this, right? Because yeah, the school lost out on a potentially super massive grant. Again, we keep emphasizing the community as well lost out on so many opportunities. But on a personal level, the people that were, in charge of leading this and potentially running this to make it grow and develop it, they're, I mean, their own personal image was damaged in all of this, right? And I don't know, like I think if she really was someone who had true character, she would come out and publicly apologize, and say, "Hey, I thought I was doing the right thing. Turns out I was wrong." It takes a big person to say that. And maybe that would gain her some bit of respect, right? Just to say, I was wrong and I'm sorry. And obviously, even in person, apologize to everyone who was damaged by all of this. But then also, again, if she also had character, true character, I would remove myself from the position and be like, this is probably a little bit above anything that I can handle, and maybe find someone else who would be able to oversee the university, better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No,
Yeah.
and I agree. I agree. I mean, look, I think one thing that was lost aside from $160 million is trust. You can't
Yeah.
trust. I mean, look, we know about this particular mishap. Um, but what about other mishaps that are out there, right? Other mistakes that we don't know
Mhm.
of, right? So the trust that the community builds on these are folks that are representative, these are folks that are leaders, these are folks that are there because they gain the trust of the community. Well, it's gone. It's gone. It just it flew away with the $160 million that got lost too with this entire ordeal. So you know, you can't. I mean, you just how can you trust her, right? You can't. You can't trust her leadership, and so that's one big issue. That's a tremendous issue. And then the other issue I would also add, aside from the trust issue, is 40% of voters nationwide, and we know this because Unidos US conducted a poll. 40% of folks, Latino voters, say that jobs and the economy are their number one issue. Now, $160 million means a lot of jobs for a lot of people, and they were lost thanks to her negligence, right? And so that's another good reason of why she should step down and allow someone else that can build the trust again in the community, in the university, in the position itself, and let them try to build a better future that we all deserve in El Paso, that Texas deserves, and quite frankly, the entire country deserves, right? So, yeah, there's no trust, and her mistake cost a lot of jobs. And thank you, Wilson, because there are going to be a lot of folks that could have had some great jobs that could have came to this city and had a great career, but you just messed up that chance. So, those stories need to be told as well, right? And so, yeah, she bye bye adios, right? She
Yeah,
she
and
should
you
be
know
gone.
what? I think that the fact that she hasn't come out to be more transparent, apologize to the community, apologize to the student body, apologize to the people that were directly affected by this. I think it also speaks volumes of how much she doesn't care, really. You
Mm,
know what I mean? Because if someone, when
true.
I make a mistake, and I hurt people that I know could have potentially really had some growth from whatever mistake I made. I mean, I'm human, right? But if I care, I come out and I say that, hey, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I made a mistake. How can I make this right for everyone? And like Steve was saying, how can I build that trust? How can I be more transparent? But the fact that she's not even bothered
Mm.
to even come and speak about it publicly, no press conference, not inviting the community to like come and ask, maybe have their say in how they're feeling about the whole thing, just really says how much she doesn't care. And so the fact that she doesn't care is already big enough reason for me to be like, well, then you don't deserve to be in that position and you should remove yourself.
Yeah, I think she might
I
also
wonder. I wonder if there's
understand.
been a poll out there, a survey where they've asked, should she stay or should she go? And I bet you that the overwhelmingly response would be she needs to go. She needs to pack it up and leave.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that'd be the case.
Hey, let's conduct a survey here.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say maybe we put it out there and
All
She's
three
gone.
go.
All three
Yeah,
go.
absolutely.
everyone in my neighborhood. No, but
Yeah.
you know what? I there was like I was thinking about it too. How can we get the community involved? Could we get this started? Could we get the conversation started to put some pressure and challenge? And Aldo was saying something earlier. Like, I love the city too. I love everything about it, enough to even criticize it, right? Because that's how we make it better when we give that feedback. And I wonder why the community doesn't get more involved.
Mm.
Is it fear that maybe their voice is not going to matter enough? And I don't know, like they feel like we're going to put all our effort and energy into starting something that's not going to give us the results that we want. Is it that maybe everybody's at a point where they're like, I don't care anymore. I don't care. I mean, I don't know. Like, what could we do as a community to get this going?
Yeah, do you guys remember? I think there was a movement called UTEP Deserves Better. There's sort of an
I don't
online
know.
group on Facebook. And there's a very distinguished gentleman by the name of Dr. Oscar Martinez. He's a sort of a Regents Professor Emeritus of History at the University of Arizona. Used to work at UTEP, went to Arizona, retired from there, but now he's back in El Paso. He actually spearheaded the movement back in 2019 to oppose Heather Wilson's appointment. And he's a gentleman that I speak to frequently. I think I even sent you guys some material that he offered for the show. And I just wanted to remind everybody that Dr. Oscar Martinez has been leading a movement since 2019, and so it was a pretty determined movement, but it never really caught fire at UTEP itself, which is unfortunate, like you were
Oh,
saying. And so. He's written editorials. I've written editorials. He's appeared on this podcast, and we've discussed this many times. We've written many editorials in many places. And it just, I think Heather Wilson understands that she's untouchable. I mean, she was basically put here by Governor Abbott. Now, I know there's the regents of the University of Texas who, went through the process of installing her, but they were appointed by Governor Abbott. And so I think she understands that she's not an elected official. She can do anything she wants, and nothing's going to happen to her. After this situation, she remains defiant. She has not come out and accepted any form of responsibility for what's going on. As a matter of fact, I think she published something in El Paso Inc. recently defending the decision to report the grant initially to the NSF. So she's not budging at all. And
That's
that's
sad.
just been her. And another thing is, she doesn't really, answer to the public. She's never had any, you know, she's never met with people from the public and allowed people to actually ask her questions. I think she knows she's untouchable. That's why I asked you guys, what does accountability for Heather Wilson look like? I mean, I don't know how we've been trying since 2019. We're going on 5, years or so, or a little more, over 5 years. And the movement kind of flares up every once in a while, and then it goes away. And I
Mm.
initially thought that a lot of students at UTEP would at least protest her in some way, but that hasn't happened, unfortunately. So yeah, and as a matter of fact, Dr. Martinez on this very podcast acknowledged that Wilson was in all likelihood part of a larger coordinated effort to facilitate the spread of conservative ideological thinking among college students in El Paso. At the time when we were saying this, it sounded a little conspiratorial, but now that we see what's going on, with DEI programs being canceled and all kinds of things like that, especially in Texas, right?
Mm. Mm.
It doesn't seem so implausible anymore that she might be part of this concerted movement to stifle, especially the Mexican American population at UTEP, or at least convert them to sort of, they're basically going to promote a conservative political agenda at UTEP and in El Paso, and that's what her job is. And so
Right.
I don't know. So let's pivot just a bit and shift the conversation to Mayor Renard Johnson. Um, First of all, just before we even discuss his connection to this whole situation, what are your impressions of Mayor Renard Johnson so far?
I know he ran as a nonpartisan, right? Like no Republican, Democrat, no other party. Um, I want to think that maybe that means he really is in it to do what the community needs, and it's here for all Pasoans. I know he ran on, growing the economy, especially attracting industries like technological industries and, things of that sort, which can mean a really good thing for the city and younger people coming up and, opportunities. Um, but then I also wonder, the skeptic in me wonders, because he has such a strong business background. I know that the funds he raised, also included funds from businesses. How much of that does it mean that it's going to be more beneficial for businesses and developers in the end, versus the community itself? So, yeah, I'm not one way or the other. I'm just kind of hoping that in the end, the community is the one that, that it speaks for itself and that the community really starts to do better, economically speaking.
Yeah, he kind of positions himself as a Democrat, and I think he's even identified himself as a Democrat. Um, Interestingly, his campaign was funded, and I've even written about this as well, by
Mhm.
Project Red Texas, which is their goal is to convert reliably blue areas of Texas, which means what? Mexican American areas of Texas,
Hmm.
uh, to convert these blue areas into Republican leaning districts or communities or whatever. So
Yeah.
that was strange. I mean,
It
he's
was
like, okay,
strange, and
I'm a Democrat, but you're getting money from Project Red Texas. Anyways, I'm sorry.
that is weird, actually.
Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
think that that's where my fear stands a little bit, because I don't know if, like, identifying himself, one way is more like of a theatrical type of, thing he's got going on to appeal to the right people, to seem like he's on board with some of the things that a lot of us are aligned with or wish to see in the community. But in the end, he's really just gonna flip on us. Yeah,
Right.
so
No, he's already done it. I mean, he'll position himself as a Democrat, but when it comes down to it, he'll do the bidding of Republicans. And one of the things
the
he
money.
did for Republicans was appoint Heather Wilson to the presidency of the University of
Mhm.
Texas at El Paso. He was part of the search committee. I don't know what he did to sort of ingratiate himself with the governor, but he was the only so-called Democrat on this search committee, and he actually recommended her appointment to the University of Texas at El Paso as president. So um, for me, that was another very strange.
Very
And to this
sketchy.
day, he sticks by her. I mean, to this day, he's a very strong proponent of Heather Wilson. Initially, when the grant was announced, he was sort of associating himself with the grant and talking about how major it was going to be for the region and sort of associating himself with the vision, the economic vision behind it. And then once they lost the grant, he started to dismiss it as just a setback. Okay. But I've never heard him say one thing about Heather Wilson, one negative thing about Heather Wilson. He has been a steadfast supporter and he was integral to the process that had her installed. And
Mhm.
so my observation and that, the article I wrote for El Paso Herald Post, I was saying I love these calls for accountability for Wilson. But I think these calls for accountability for Wilson need to extend to Mayor Renard Johnson as well. And
Yeah,
any other
'cause
politicians who continue to support her, associate with her. We may not be able to get at her, but we can certainly get at the so-called Democrats who continue to support her. And those are people like Samaniego
Yeah.
and
right.
Yeah.
Blanco and people who support Renard Johnson. Yes, she's untouchable, but you're not. And so I think accountability should include them as well. But
I
anyways, I'm
think
Yeah.
sorry,
so
what were you gonna say?
too. Because if she's your girl, and you're
Hmm.
not willing to hold her accountable or ask her hard questions, right? Then you need to be held accountable as well.
No.
Right.
No, and I agree. And I think also, when we talk about accountability in El Paso, in whatever other state, we can talk about California. I think what when we talk about accountability, you're talking about the ability of a community to organize, right, effectively. And in this case, you're talking representative, so it's a vote. The ability of your community to go out there, organize the vote, and then use the vote as a tool to create change, right? And so you just vote the person out, right? You don't, it's not good for the community, so let's vote that person out. Um, and so I'm surprised that Johnson even got elected in El Paso. I wasn't following the race, tell you the truth. I don't know what happened there. But it is surprising to me because, I right now I'm not in El Paso. I've been living in El Paso for about 12 years, but I still think it's a Latino majority city, right? I mean, what's the population there? 70% Mexican American,
I think it's
80%,
80% or more.
or
I
even
think the
more.
last time I looked,
And
yeah.
so voter demographics, do they reflect that 70%, 80%?
No,
No, they don't. Okay, so there you
No.
go. I
no.
see. And then again,
Nope.
I don't know, right? I don't know. But if they don't know, I mean, if it doesn't, then that's really, the root of the issue, right? I mean, regardless of who you have in power, it could be Johnson, it could be someone else, right? But if the people of our community are not uh, empowered to exercise the power of the vote and to decide who their representatives should be, then this story is going to repeat itself again and again and again because we're not we're not addressing the root cause of the issue. So I haven't done my research. I'll be completely honest. I haven't done my research, but it is surprising to me that when we talk about a population that's 80-90% Mexican American and being represented by a mayor who is not or doesn't match that demographic, well, then it's like, what's going on here, right?
What's
There's
going
there's
on?
something there's something fishy, right? There's something that just doesn't pair up. So,
Yeah.
anyways, just an observation. Again, I don't have the research, but it just seems like you know things don't pair up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and I think maybe Aldo, I let me know if because I don't want to get too much into this and then like just divert from what we're talking about. But like on my podcast, we talk a lot about without even trying, it always seems to lead to a huge problem in the Latino community, and this huge push that we've been seeing over the last years of a lot of adherence to white supremacy, right? Adherence to whiteness, and I think that that influences how a
Mm.
lot of Latinos are voting, who they're supporting. It's really also coming from the churches, right? Like those conservative views and kind of
Mm,
getting into the community. Because, Latinos' faith is huge for us, right? And it's in almost every household. And so you have it coming from the churches where they're pushing this conservative agenda and also adherence to whiteness and I don't want to be compared to the immigrants. I'm with you guys. I'm one of the good ones, right? And that all there's so many layers, right? So many, we could do like several podcasts on this.
Do a year of
But I
podcasts.
mm,
yeah, we
There's
could
that's
have a
a
whole
very
series
yes.
on this alone.
Yes.
But I think that that's one of the biggest reasons why we're not seeing that we're actually seeing that being reflected at the polls, really. I
mm.
don't know if you would agree, Aldo.
No, absolutely. I think that's a big factor in everything that's going on with the Latino vote. We talked about it before, Steve, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Two types of ignorance at play here. One, they just don't know what they're voting for. I can't tell you how many times I've, engaged with a Mexican American or Latino Trump supporter, and I start to ask them stuff, and they don't know what the hell I'm talking about, you
No,
know?
it's just like
Um,
whatever
eh,
my pastor told me, whatever my
yeah,
whatever friend told me,
yes,
whatever Univision and Televisa, sorry, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
whatever is being advertised. Oh, because
Hmm.
these are channels that they trust. And so they're going to go with the people they trust without even doing the research, without asking questions themselves. And that's why it's so important. That's why we were saying earlier, everything is political, from the food you consume to the
Hmm.
media you're consuming, the conversations you're having around the table. And there was like, I think the first Trump presidency, or maybe even when the second one, when Biden was running for president, and there was this big push of like, just vote, just vote, just vote, right? Like, because we were trying to get people to actually exercise their right to vote. I think in the last few years, I've kind of taken that back, and I'm like, if you don't know, please don't vote. I
Yes,
and
thank
this is
you.
very personal to me. Obviously, I'm
No, I
not saying I'm
totally
not encouraging
agree.
people,
Yes,
but I'm saying if you
yes,
are not sure, if you
yeah.
haven't gone to the meetings or maybe have read things online that play out the agenda, the policies of the people that are running, and you're not sure, don't vote.
Yeah,
That's my personal opinion.
totally
Yeah,
agree.
no, and I also want to say this though
Yes.
too. There's that piece, and that's very important too. But also, when you talk about, who's in control of the narrative, right? Why are these folks being told to vote this way and being convinced to vote in that certain manner? So, that's another issue. It's like, well, who's in control of the narrative, and why are we
Mhm.
paying attention to those folks when those folks have no interest, right, in the advancement of our community? And
Mhm.
so it's also, we have to kind of look in that mirror and say, well, I'm also responsible for that. And we
Right.
were talking earlier, right? The fact that you decided, Julie, to start a podcast, right, to get our voice out, is how we make a difference, right? We start pushing our story. We start telling our story. If not, that story is going to be kidnapped, right? That story is going to be distorted. That story is going to be told by someone that doesn't look like us, doesn't think like us, doesn't act like us, doesn't have our background, doesn't have our culture, doesn't have, common interests. It's not going to happen, or shared values, right? It's not going to happen. So we need to take that initiative, and we have to push that narrative. And I think that's what we're doing today, right? And
Yep.
and for that, I'm very grateful for having this opportunity to be in front of this mic and speaking my point of view and sharing my point of view with our listeners. But we need to continue to do this, right, and to continue to push our narrative.
Right. No, absolutely. And the second, I guess, variation of ignorance, I don't know if it's ignorance or delusion, are those Mexican Americans who somehow think that, they're welcome in MAGA land or whatever.
Yeah.
What is it about, like you mentioned white supremacy earlier, and that's something we talk about a lot. At its core, MAGA is about white supremacy, ladies and
It
gentlemen.
is.
And by definition, that excludes many of these
All of us.
MAGA bootlicking Mexican Americans, because it doesn't matter if you're in Border Patrol, it doesn't matter, if you're the biggest MAGA bootlicker out there, whatever. You're still not a part of MAGA. Their vision for America is you're not a part of it. Sorry.
Not.
Sorry.
They're
Uh,
using your vote, they're using your support to
mhm.
continue moving forward and pushing their agenda. And then when it's time and they have the opportunity, they will throw you
Yes,
under the bus. They do it to each other. Why
absolutely.
wouldn't they do
Oh
it to
yeah.
anybody else, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and I think this goes back, like I said, this is like so many layers, but this goes back to because I was like, why do so many Latinos vote for him? And even today, still support
Mhm.
everything this administration is doing, when clearly it includes
Mhm.
affecting people that would look like them, right?
Yes.
But I think
Hmm.
it's again that idea of colonialism, right? Like from
Yeah.
Yeah.
in all of Latin America, colorism, right? Like I have to adhere to what's higher in the pyramid, right? Like the system that was established to feel safe, to feel
Mm,
protected. And I feel that sometimes it's maybe not even processed like that. Like it's not something that they consciously
mm,
know
Hmm.
or understand, but it's within our culture very rooted, right? Like when we
Yes.
talk about people's skin and if they're darker they're better, like they're not better, they're dirtier, they're ignorant, like that stupid
Hmm.
mentality, right? And so I
Yes.
think it's ingrained, and so I believe that a lot of that has to do with I need to separate myself with the ones that are being frowned upon, so that
Hmm.
I'm one of the good guys, the good guys, and I'm gonna be with you guys, and because I support it, look at everything I'm doing for you, I'm going
Hmm.
to be excluded from that, but they're not, right?
They're
Sadly.
not.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm being facetious here, reusing some material, but my joke is, what does MAGA have to do to convey their hostility to you people? I mean, they call you rapists and criminals. They abuse you at every turn. If you listen to, I spent a lot of time kind of in the darker spaces of the internet, listening to what these people actually say about
It's
Mexicans in
terrible.
particular. And I'm just thinking, I feel, what do they have to do to let you know, Mexican American Trump supporters, that they don't like you. They don't want,
They
they
really
would deport
don't.
you in a second if they could, and they might. You never know, right? Give them some time.
Yeah.
It's kind of pathetic, to be honest,
Well,
and a very
hold on, hold
complicated,
on. I,
yeah.
I want to disagree. They might want you if you're going to be the gardener, the mechanic, the person
Yeah, I
Right.
who's
guess
going
maybe. Yeah.
to,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
clean
Maybe
their
serve them
house,
in some way.
take care of them.
Yes.
Yeah, to serve them. Yeah, they might want you for that.
And
But anything
maybe
else,
vote for them, I guess.
yeah,
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't even know if they want us voting, to be honest with you.
I don't
I
know
don't
Um,
know.
voting.
Anyways, guys, very interesting conversation. So let's just take our final break, and we could probably talk about this stuff for hours, but let's
Forever.
just take a quick break, and we'll be right back with another installment of Drug of Choice.
You are listening to Vanguard Elements, the alternative Mexican American voice of the Southwest. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the individual expressing those views and opinions, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated organization, employer, or institution. Thank you for supporting independent Mexican American media.
Welcome back. You're listening to Vanguard Elements. So we sometimes feature a segment called Drug of Choice, in which we recommend or discuss a news story, podcast, or political candidate or other item that is sort of worthy of our attention. So Julie, do you have something you're following, a story, a Substack podcast that you're kind of interested in at this point?
Where to begin, right? Because there's so much happening, first of all, and there are some wonderful people all over the nation who are kind of taking different sections, different things, and trying to do their best to report on it and keep us informed, right? So this is kind of a tough one for me, but just like immediately when you asked, the one that really just kind of came to mind. This is an individual by the name of Che. Well, he goes by Che Guerrero. He actually started out as a stand-up comedian. Funny guy, but very, very also super smart, right? And he kind of started like that, but then he quickly, within the first few months of the first Trump presidency, he kind of found himself speaking on something that was very personal to him because he's undocumented. He came here as a young child, has tried various ways, and I think he still has some stuff ongoing. This is, by the way, this is something that he's very open about. I'm not putting him in any danger here. But so he turned activist very quickly, and he has a huge following on Instagram, I believe TikTok as well. And he is just talk about somebody who really advocates for the whole Latino community. He's actually Dominican, I believe, but he's just so supportive of anyone who is Latino, Latina. I had him on my podcast. Amazing guy. His story is wonderful, but he also does really wonderful job now just pushing constant information, that's for us, for the Latino community, that's important for us. So he's kind of like my go-to most of the time. Che Guerrero. Yeah, he's wonderful. And he shares all kinds of stories. So it's hard for me to just pick one. But he's like a very, very trustworthy, yeah, I guess I could call him a journalist now, independent journalist, that he pushes really, really good information out there for everyone.
Wow, sounds interesting. Cool.
Yeah, definitely check him out. He's great.
Ooh, I'm not sure if I already mentioned this guy, but I follow this person. has nothing to do with politics, everything to do with science. And this guy's name is Dr. Andrew Huberman, the Huberman Lab. That's his podcast. Pretty interesting dude. The guy's from California. He's around 50 years old. Um, his dad is from Argentina. Dad's a scientist. He's also a scientist. Teaches out of Stanford. But what I like about his podcasts is that they're very informative in the sense that, I'm trying to stay healthier, right? And I think, health is one of those things for us as Latinos and Mexicanos that sometimes we're not really paying a lot of attention to. And so, listening to this guy, I realized that all the Coca-Cola and Pepsi that I drank in Mexico, well, it's not good for you, by the way. All the sugar that you drink is terrible. I'm telling you. So, I mean, he does a great job at breaking it down, and then he'll bring on a guest to talk about those type of issues or topics. But it's interesting though when you look at that and you look at the effect of sugar, which we all know is terrible, right? But the effect of sugar on the body versus, for example, the effect of caffeine, right? Or coffee. Coffee is not bad for you, apparently.
It's full of
Coffee,
Thank
antioxidants.
God. Thank God.
yeah, yeah, and I
Thank
mean
God, I would have
Thank
been
God.
gone already.
it's what we throw in our coffee that makes it harmful to us.
Right.
But black coffee is pretty, and it's an acquired taste. I get it, but coffee in itself, and I want to go off on this, but the thing is, it helps regulate our dopamine and blah blah blah. But my point is, I think it's beneficial to kind of lead a healthy life. So yeah, Dr. Huberman.
Huberman.
And it's
Huberman.
Huberman Lab.
Hmm.
Yeah. Cool
I'm gonna
dude.
write
Interesting.
that
All
down.
kinds of episodes. All kinds.
If it's
Wow.
okay that I say something else, Aldo, with you, I'm going to try
Sure.
to be super
Sure.
short, like just to piggyback off of what Steve was saying. You know how
Hmm.
earlier we said everything is political, and sometimes people feel like they have to have like a PhD in political science, or they have to be on CNN and and like have all these accolades to be able to like speak on it. Sometimes being political is as simple as what Steve mentioned, which is eating better,
Hmm.
cooking at home,
Mm,
how you spend your dollar, right? Like buying certain things, which businesses you support. That is huge.
Yes.
That's already being
Yes.
very political, and you're making your voice, it reflects what you want as well too. But so it can be as, and not that health is a small thing, it's a huge thing, but it's usually health. Taking care of yourself is something that people are more open to doing, like a little, like, okay, sure, I'll drink, I'll stop with the Coke. I'll drink more water. I'll stop adding sugar to my coffee. But
mm,
that's also it's revolutionary actually too.
yeah. Oh. And you know what?
Absolutely.
Sometimes the dominant narrative, again, we
Hmm.
talk about brands out there. They will tell you, drink, this sugary drink. And I'm not going to name any brands. I don't think it's important, but again, I don't want to do any creating publicity for them. But the point is, they've been telling us time after time after time. And when I grew up, when I was in Chihuahua, Mexico, and I was living there, I lived there for 80 years. I remember every time when we sat at the table to have comida, a la hora de la comida, there was always coquitas
La
on the table.
coquita, sí.
Always,
Pero in Mexico
always.
too.
Yeah, it was
I
always a
don't know what
coca,
it
and you had your tortillas de maíz, and you had your coquitas, right? And it's just it was just part of it was so that narrative was so strong that everyone accepted that hey, if you drink a Coke, it's okay, ain't gonna do you that bad. But we know
is.
that oh my God, it's caused so much havoc on our community, um, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I've been sort of closely following the situation with Representative Tony Gonzalez from, I
Ooh,
think it's Congressional District 23, which I
ooh,
guess it's most of that district's in the San Antonio area. There's this huge expanse from San Antonio that extends all the way into the eastern edge of El Paso County, if I'm not mistaken. So he does represent a portion of El Paso County.
Oh,
And so he, I guess, he's facing a lot of controversy and calls to resign after reports surfaced alleging that he exchanged sexually explicit text messages with a former
right.
congressional staffer who later died by suicide in 2025, I think. The
But
messages, which have
the
been,
way she died too,
oh
Aldo.
yeah,
I
that was
know,
very
horrific.
gruesome. Yes. And this is being reported by San Antonio Express News, a very reputable media outlet. And he's in these text messages. I think if you jump on today, you'll see the little chain of text messages. He's asking, he's requesting, intimate photos and
He's
making
always
very
very pushy
suggestive
about it, though, right?
Yes.
It's like you can
Hmm.
see the power play there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was a staffer, so it was a position, he was in a position of authority over her.
Hmm.
And of course, he's denying having an affair and has refused calls to resign that are coming from even Republicans. I think Representative Lauren Boebert recently called him
Oh wow, in
something and asked him
Colorado,
to
huh?
resign. So I'm following this. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out or if it has any effect on the upcoming Republican primary in CD23. I guess the alternative would be that AK guy, Brandon Herrera. I guess he's challenging him for the Republican nomination there. But I guess it's just another example of Republican hypocrisy, right? Because these are the religious people.
Of the
Not
what is
putting
it,
down
family
religion.
values?
Yeah, and this evangelical crowd.
The false
Uh,
prophets.
so he's
Yes.
always, talking about that sort of stuff. But well, what do you know? Something like this comes out, you
Well,
know?
isn't it funny how all these things that usually, and I'm not even trying to like just point to them, like it really is a lot on the Republican side and the most conservative ones, that the things that they run on, right? Like I'm against
Hmm.
transgenders and LGBTQ and
Hmm.
same-sex marriages and abortion
Yep.
and all these things. I really do feel that the saying every accusation is a confession is so true. It rings
Yes.
true
Mm.
for so many of them all the time. And I'm like,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
again, people just blindly continue to follow them for whatever
Yeah,
reason, right? But
Yeah. Oh, yes.
yeah.
definitely. Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, guys. Well, I guess we're going to go ahead and, call it a night. Thank you both for being a part of a very interesting conversation. I think this conversation could have gone on and on.
Mm.
Julie, it was a pleasure. Please let us know if there's ever anything we can do for you. We're at your service. Uh, let's definitely keep in touch. If
Yes.
somebody wanted to sort of follow you on social media or find your podcast, where should they go?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Aldo. This was amazing. Thank you. It was wonderful meeting and conversing with Steve as well. If
Likewise.
anybody is interested in following and all my rants and seeing what I'm doing, also just from my personal life, my Instagram is public and open to anyone to follow me if they like. And you can find me at Julie N. Renton. So all Julie N. Renton on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook too. I'm a little bit more private there, but you can also shoot me a message or something as Julie Renton. And then my podcast, which is going to start recording soon again. No Pasa Nada. You can find me on Instagram, No Pasa Nada Podcast. You can also find me on Facebook. That's the same.
Great. Thank you
Thank
guys
you.
both very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a
Have a
great
wonderful
night.
night.
Gracias.
Gracias a todos.
You have been listening to Vanguard Elements, the alternative Mexican American voice of the Southwest. For additional information, please follow us on X at SolidarityWMEX or visit our website at solidaritywithmexico.org. Please also check out our affiliated online publication, Fronterizo Magazine, at fronterizonews.com. Thank you for supporting independent Mexican American media.